So when should we start? A
few
few bills. Okay.
Good morning. Yeah. Did all of you get a chance to take your coffee breaks? Did you play the games that we have in the stalls? So ensure you don't forget, because there are really good takeaways that you can take. There is also one more that has been introduced in the morning, is at the CollabNet stall. It's a very lucky draw, so simple. Just go drop your name or your visiting card, and at I think 4 p.m. or 4:30 p.m. there will be a lucky draw, and you'll be winning. I think Echo Shot. I think that's the prize. So try your lucks there. Okay. So let's get on started with Bimal's session now. Welcome, Bimal. Bimal Mampata is the principal technical architect at Society Generale Global Solutions. He has over 17 years of experience in the industry, has led strategy and implementation for several enterprise-wide programs to solve business problems and increase business profitability. He has also deployed enterprise-level packages for driving business processes, efficiencies, architecture simplification, supportability, and reducing total cost of ownership. Today, he will be walking us through the topic, what does it take to do cloud transformation in highly regulated industries in that environment? Welcome, Bimal, and over to you.
Thank you. Okay, so hello everyone. As introduced, I'm Bimal Mampata. I have around 17 years of experience in the IT industry, and currently I work for Society Generale in Bangalore. If for those of you who don't know, Society Generale is one of the big banks in Europe, and today's topic is going to cover mainly how to do cloud transformation in the banking industry, which is really highly regulated, and the challenges faced are unique to this industry. So let's get on with it. You might have seen this application landscape in your companies. This is pre-transformation. You have a lot of legacy systems, and especially for banks which have been in the market for decades maybe, these applications have been in production for years. And a lot of these applications could be mainframe or SAP or any of the big vendors, but still they are entrenched in the organization and very difficult to move. So what are some of the issues with this legacy transformation? So the legacy systems are mainly monoliths. So as you can see, most of them are very big. You cannot break them down, and this leads to unique challenges on how to improve them. If you want to make any changes, it takes a long time. You will probably need a multi-year program if you want to make any changes to these legacy applications. So it's very inefficient, and the technology is outdated. A lot of the technologies are not even in the market these days, so it doesn't even make sense to do those changes. Another issue is that you have separate applications in different departments. So do the same thing. You could have a timesheet application maybe which the HR department uses, and another one that the IT department uses. So you need to bring synergies across these, otherwise the efficiency of the organization really suffers. Another issue is that you have all of these applications are tightly coupled to the database. So if the application goes down, you lose access to that data. There's no way to access the data without that application. Another thing that we see is vendors. So vendor lock-in is a problem which is probably not unique to banks, but you have to understand where this problem originates. Vendors are there to make money, and you need to recognize that fact, and also make sure that you use the vendors wisely, because even after post transformation you will have vendors, but how do you use them wisely is something that you need to recognize. So what do vendors do? They lock you into long-term contracts. You could probably see that most of these vendors give upfront discounts if you have a longer contract, and this is how they entice you to buy their product. Another thing that you can see is the vendor will cross sell. So if you buy a suite of applications from one particular vendor and you have a new business need, what they would say is, hey, we have this application which fits in with our suite, and it's very easy to integrate with all the other applications that you've already bought from us. So it's just plug and play. Why don't you buy this new application? So that's another way that the vendor upsells or cross sells. And then what they say is that it integrates, but that's just pseudo integration, because this new application that you've brought in is only interacts with other applications from the same vendor. If you need to integrate from outside, you will find it very difficult or even impossible to integrate that particular application from outside this suite. So that's another issue. Another thing that we see before transformation is this great wall between dev and ops. So we are here all in a DevOps conference, and probably all of you recognize this as a problem that you see currently. The developer, he is always ready to write his code. All he does is he wants to make sure that the new features are coded, it meets his standards, and he checks it into the code repository, whichever it is. But that's where his job stops. He doesn't care what happens after that, unless maybe the testing team says there is a bug in his code and he has to fix it. So then the iteration starts again. Now once the code is ready to be released, then comes the ops guy. So at that point in time, the ops will deploy the application into the production environment. But the priority of the ops guy is 99% uptime. So if there's any issue in the application in production, he will just blame the dev guy. And the dev will say, no, it's working fine in my local environment. Ops team did something wrong and messed it up in production. And that's a great fight between the dev and the ops. Another issue is the mindset. So if you can relate to this particular project plan, which every project manager is comfortable building, it's a typical waterfall. You have multiple stages, design phase, testing phase, production phase, and or you have separate activities with start times, end times. And he's very comfortable doing this. It's been working for him for years and decades. Why should he change? But this plan will not work in the current environment. So he needs to be ready to change, and the organization along with him. So now we as transformation agents come in, and at that point in time, what do we have to do to force the organization and the people to change? You have to sell them a business plan. So you need to say, why do you need to change? So number one reason is costs. Especially in banks, this is the number one thing anybody looks for. They are very careful about where their money is spent, as they should be, their banks. And you need to sell that to them, how it will do that. Then reduce time to market. You're talking about, again, the original project plan that we saw earlier. It could take months, it could take even years. Now, with the transformation, you need to prove to them that this can be reduced. So that's another one. Improve efficiency. So along with the transformation, you bring in a lot of automation, and you automate every step of the process as much as you can, and that brings in the efficiency change along with the cloud transformation. So this is also important. And there's innovation that gets fostered, and innovation is a big buzzword in the industry nowadays. And as banks, we need to also achieve innovation, whether it be blockchain or any other new technologies out there. Us banks, which maybe have been using legacy technology, need to innovate and find new solutions in this new era. So let's go a little deeper into how do you optimize costs. So what we did was we got the current costs from our infra teams. So the infra teams, the ops teams can provide the cost of what is the run plus ops for each application, and then you roll that up to a business level. You can roll it up to in the enterprise level, and then you can find out how much run plus ops costs are. Then what we did was we did calculator. So AWS has its own TCO calculator, Azure has its own, and there are other calculators out there which we built in-house. So with this, we saw that there is a drastic change in the cost if you move to this new cloud infrastructure. This is the first proof that you need to provide in the banks to get your business case accepted. So we did this. Then reducing time to market. So when you talk about reducing time to market, you have to get the number of releases. So again, we have different teams which can provide this data, and we say how many releases have happened into production, and you could even go down to different environments. And you typically see that in a waterfall model, you have maybe 1 release per quarter, maybe 2 releases per quarter maximum. And this is really inefficient. So we did a quick pilot for 1-2 applications, and we built a whole one-click deployment CI/CD pipeline in Jenkins, which looks something like this. And we showed it to them how easy it is to build this pipeline, and your code gets into production by just a click. So, but with this, you definitely need to understand that you have different automated processes which also need to be mature enough to do this deployment. But as a pilot, it's always good to show what can be done, and then maybe define more of how it can be done as processes later. Yes. For this, so for the pilot, what we did was we have multiple providers in-house. The easiest one is the private cloud that we had, so that we have more control there, and we set up the CI/CD to deploy to that private cloud.
As a bank, you're choosing the private cloud, right, rather than going to the public one?
Yes. So we'll cover that strategy later on how we are trying to.
Can we do the questions at the end of the session so
Yeah.
it will not interrupt his flow also?
Yeah.
Please
So.
remember the questions.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll answer the question later. Some of them might already be answered when I talk about it, but if there are questions, I can take it at the end also. Then we talked about efficiency, automation. So we automate almost every part of the SDLC, that you call it. Development, there is not much automation you can do right now, but probably later you can bring more. But again, you try to do one-click deployments, one-click provision of infrastructure, sorry. So what you do is you provide tools where project team can just click a button and you get your dev infrastructure up and running. Compare that earlier to when you had to give a request to an infra team, and they would take weeks or months to provision your servers, install all the software, and then give it back to you. Here, with just one click, you get that. So there's a lot of effort savings going on there. Then, like I said, you have CI and CD. So you automate the build process, you automate the deployment process. So earlier we used to have big release teams who used to take care of which build has to happen at what time, maybe nightly builds, and there are bugs in that, so the builds fail. So you have to reach out to the developers to say, okay, hey, your code check-in has caused the build to fail, you need to fix it. So this was a manual process, and there were a lot of time being wasted because of that. So now you automate that. Even deployment is very easy to automate. You don't need a separate ops team to take your code and deploy it into a machine out there. You can also do this sonar code scanning. You can do Fortify security vulnerability scanning, check mark scanning. A lot of tools are out there which automate your security scanning and your automated testing. So you don't need manual testers to test your code. So do all of that, and we have done all of that. Talking about innovation. So today, if you want to do a POC, it was very difficult because you have an idea, but you don't know how to test it out in an environment. You ask for a server, and the infra team takes weeks to deliver a server, and then you have to do a POC, and it takes time. Now, with a click of a button, you have a server ready for you, and you deploy your code, and you can finish your POC in a matter of a sprint. So, lot more POCs, lot more innovation going on because of this. And then you also have cloud providers like Amazon, Azure, IBM. All of them have lot of services around which you can innovate. So if you want analytics, you have Kinesis from Amazon, which provides that engine for you. You just need to have your idea, deploy it, and see if it works. Machine learning also, there are lots of services out there, and there are many more from the providers, and they keep adding more and more services there. Now you've sold the business case, and what do the business do? They come back with challenges. So okay, so when we're talking about cloud, you also need to talk about some of the industry studies that are out there, which says people are moving more and more to the cloud. This is the Cisco survey, which talks about 90% of the cloud compute loads being going to cloud. There are many more studies out there which you can bring. And you can also talk about the different types of cloud if the business is interested. Like I was saying, business is always going to challenge you. They're going to say, no, but is my data going to be secure? Because everybody's heard about security challenges when you go to the cloud. And our banks are no different. One of the main issues in banks is the idea of data breaches. So Capital One, you might have heard, had a data breach recently. There were, I think, hundreds of millions of records that were stolen credit card data. And it was because of a misconfigured S3 bucket is what we are hearing so far. So when people hear that, immediately there's a question asked, okay, is my data going to be secure in the cloud? So actually data breaches are not that rare. You have data breaches everywhere. As you can see from this chart, Yahoo had a data breach of 3 billion records years ago. But the data is different. Here it is credit card data, there it was personal information of people. So the scale is also different because if you talk about the costs, Yahoo had to pay $50 million for their costs, and Capital One 10 times that, 500 million so far, and it's only been a couple of months. So that number is just going to increase. So you need to be aware that security is going to be a big concern for your customers. So how do you overcome that? What we do is we go for a hybrid cloud strategy. So I think like the question was asked, we have a private cloud as well as a public cloud strategy. So some applications which are really sensitive, we will move to the private cloud. So it is still within your data center, you have control of it. The other, other data classifications you can move to the public cloud. Then cloud providers provide encryption on the wire as well as at rest. And those encryption keys are with you. So even if you move data to the public cloud, you need to make sure that you have these best practices in place and you have your keys, you secure your keys and make sure that they don't get into the wrong hands. And then even the cloud providers don't have those keys. So it's up to you to own that security of the data. As well as you can configure the access. It's very easy to configure IAM groups in AWS, Azure. You make sure that only authorized people have access to the infrastructure and the data that you're storing on the cloud. And it's very easy. Even the dev teams can take care of it nowadays. Another challenge is the regulatory needs. So banks have hundreds of regulations that we need to comply with. So the majority of the data has to be stored for 5 years also. So 5 years and above. So this is something which is very unique to the banks. I used to work in retail earlier. There were compliance and regulatory needs, but it was minimal compared to this. So here you need to be aware that that is going to be a challenge that the business is going to expect you to overcome. And you need to make sure that the access to that data is monitored and audited, and you need to provide regulators who has accessed what data at what time. So how do you meet this challenge? As you can see, most of the cloud providers are compliant with a lot of the regulatory needs out there. So for example, for us Europe, you have GDPR and you have all the other, so AWS provides this on their webpage, all the regulatory requirements that they meet. So you can use this to convince your business. You can, another thing is, as you can see, a lot of the cost related to this regulatory need, meeting the regulatory needs is with the storage. You need to store a lot of data. And if you move your data to the cloud, it is going to be very cheap. So this is something that you can get, again, a lot of statistics and cost benefits out of this and project this to your business. We have seen part of our data lake also being moved to the public cloud, which is something that we are trying to bring more and more into this. And you can also replicate this data. So if you're scared that the cloud provider might lose my data, you replicate it across regions, across availability zones. Also, there are different levels of data storage. So you can go to tape backup or Amazon Glacier or whatever is available from the provider, so that you have multiple replicas of your data, you don't lose it. So it's actually much safer with them than you store it in your data center. Another challenge is cloud expertise. So as you can see here, there are many technologies related to cloud and CI/CD and DevOps. If you have taken the crossword challenge in, I think the Sapient booth, you would have seen there are so many things out there which I found it difficult to finish that puzzle. But how do you convince your business that you're going to be experts in all of these fields? So that is something which you need new skills, and how do you do that is something you have to convince. So what we've done is we have internal DevOps and cloud coaches. So basically, if you look at the State of DevOps report, this is one of the ways in which you can accelerate cloud transformation. It's called training center. So you have people who are experts, you bring them on, and then you use them to teach the others. So it's basically something which you can build in-house. You can certify experts and build internal certification programs so that everybody becomes an expert. 10 people teaching another 10 people, all of them become experts. And technical debt. So when we're talking about technical debt, it is again the vendors and the legacy that we find. So it's huge in banks. How do you overcome technical debt? So we've moved to open source. So open source is something which reduces the dependency on vendors, and the open source movement will give you all the features that you need. And you move to API so that you can bring synergies across departments, and you don't have that dependency of one application replicated. So I'll quickly go through some of the strategies that we use. So how do you transform your existing applications? You have targets for meeting each and every, so for 1 year you have X%, you can double that in the next year. and you can move up and up until you have majority of the transformation done for applications. For greenfield applications, what you have to do is you have to look at the cloud native principle. So you have to be cloud by default. Only if you don't have, only if you have good reason to not do cloud, then you can take that as an exception. Otherwise, you need to use cloud native principles to design your applications. And another strategy is based on data classification. So based on that, you say either whether public or private cloud. And DevOps. So DevOps is really integral here. You need not only cloud, you need your DevOps mindset to be in place. So you start off with your agile transformation. So the business needs to be agile enough to plan their sprints and the functionality they need to deliver. Based on that, you need to set a team goal of being autonomous. So a dev team should not depend on other teams like ops teams or a BA team to get their work done. The KPIs that you measure should see how many teams have been turned to DevOps or autonomous. Then CI/CD tools. You need to identify some CI/CD tools that you're going to use and bring in experts for those tools. And you need to build new skills like cloud native architecture, infrastructure as code, and those skills need to be brought into their organization. And servant leader management. So basically your DevOps team is in control of the product, but you are going to, if you tell them that no, you need to listen to what the leader says, that's not going to work. They need to take the decisions, and the leader should help them in take those decisions. So I think, so we have 10 minutes? Okay. Okay, because the timer says 10 minutes, so there was something missed, right? Oh, okay. Okay. So I think I'll just move on to the last slide. Okay, so is it working? So we have KPIs, we measure them, and we are proud to say that targets are being met internally. We have many more autonomous teams, and autonomous teams are the norm now. So if you are a new team that is being set up, you either have a DevOps person or you have some dev person who is expert at ops. And it's cloud by default now. So first you have to think about cloud. If you have any exception, then you have to prove that. And that's the culture that we are building here in Society General. Okay, thank you. We can take the questions later also.
Yeah, I request you all to take the questions in the networking and the lunch and the coffee breaks. We have a small quiz running, as you know. So Bimal, to you for any 2 questions of your choice from your presentations or your generic cloud-based question.
Okay.
They can win prizes.
Okay, so maybe I'll start off with, so I think Topo talked earlier about bringing cloud transformation to startups and enterprises like us. So which one is easier? What did he say?
Raise your hand first and then, yeah.
Raise your hand, then we'll see.
Yeah, there, the last.
Startup not equal to enterprise.
Okay.
You agree with that? Okay.
So
can you
he
come
said
on
one
this-
word, he said enterprise also. Okay.
Okay.
But anyway, Topo said it is startup, so
Okay.
yeah. So we can discuss that later. So but I would agree with him, but we can talk about that later. Yes.
Which one?
Startup. Yeah.
The one who said startup? Yeah. Would you please come? You said that, right? Startup is not equal to enterprise. Yeah, next question.
Yeah. So
We'll have both the winners together. Yeah. You can ask the next question.
okay,
No, you can come here.
we come here and take.
Do the focus session once we have the next winner also. Yeah, you can ask the next question.
Okay. So another question is, so I talked about the state of DevOps report. So what model are we following for accelerating our journey? Anybody?
Yeah.
DevSecOps is what?
No, not DevSec.
Not.
Please raise your hand.
Raise your hand first. Yeah, there. No, she. I let her answer, please.
No.
No.
Cloud is first.
One second.
Okay,
you
no.
were answering, sir. The one in the.
No, no.
No. Okay, you madam?
Yeah?
Private cloud.
No.
Okay.
Hybrid model.
Okay.
Okay, please come. Give that. Yeah. Give
Here you
that.
Thanks, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Bimal. Thank you for a wonderful session. I know there are a lot of questions given the topic is a very highly interesting cloud and which is the most happening and the buzzword right now. If you don't know cloud, you are as well as not part of the agile drive anymore. So it's as good as that. So reach out to him. While the next speaker is setting up the system, I'll just make a couple of announcements. One, don't forget to tweet us. Do you all remember what is the hashtag we need to use? DOIS19, not 2019, not the full form of DOIS, but DOIS19, DOIS19. That is one. And we are already getting a lot of inputs, so you can be the winner. Go ahead with that. We have 2 big prizes to be won there. And the next one is there are a lot of goodies to be won in each of the stalls. Simple games, and you could win something really good. Yeah. So bring that in. And Bimal, when you finish packing, I want you back on the stage. Yeah. And we also have a lot of goodies in each of the stalls. The third thing is there is a question that will be your questions that you can for the panel in the late evening session. Please drop your questions at the Excel Intro booth, and we also have a prize for one of the best winning questions from the panelists. Okay, so too many goods and goodies to be won, too many gifts around. So don't forget, don't miss out anything. Bimal, we would like you to facilitate you from the DOIS community. Sharmila, madam. Can we have a big round of applause, please? Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Bimal. Yeah. Yeah, I have kept it ready.